Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video I'll be talking about another one of my all-time favorite games, and especially one of my all-time favorite games on the PS4, and that is Horizon Zero Dawn. And to prepare for this video I did do a full replay of the main game along with most of its side content, and also played the Frozen Wilds DLC as well. It had actually been about 2 years since I last played Horizon Zero Dawn, and it's a game I absolutely adored the first time I played it. But when the PC port of the game was announced months back now, I always had it in my plans to go ahead and replay the game. I really just had an itch to play it again, because again, it had been a while, and obviously I did, and why not make a video about it? So I decided to finally replay it here, and Horizon is a game that, again, it feels like it was just made for me. I mean, the gameplay is that of a Witcher-style RPG, a bit toned down, but I don't personally mind that, and narratively it has the mystery and sci-fi elements that I loved from the earlier Assassin's Creed games. Now, I played Horizon for the first time a bit after its initial release. I think it was like a few months later, and at the time I actually hadn't played The Witcher 3 yet, so Horizon was really my introduction to a Witcher-style RPG. I know a lot of people say Horizon isn't an RPG, but I mean, it is, isn't it? While it might not have the intricate systems as something like The Witcher 3 or Skyrim or Fallout, I mean, it is still an action RPG. It has a level system, has a high level of customization, has crafting systems, has dialogue options. I mean, it has too many RPG elements to not just be looked at as an RPG. But I really do love the gameplay style of these Witcher-style RPGs. I mean, obviously I love The Witcher 3, I love Assassin's Creed Origins, which are games I look at as pretty similar to this game. I think Horizon might actually be my favorite new gaming IP of the generation. Let's talk about the game itself, starting off with its visuals, which this game is simply beautiful. I actually forgot how visually impressive this game is. I mean, the environments are really vibrant and have a really cool mix of like sort of a tribal feel, mixing that in with like sci-fi aesthetics that the context of the narrative allows it to have. Most of the cutscenes in the game look really impressive as well, though you do notice some really wonky facial animations at points. The open world in this game also has a wide range of locations, from snowy mountains to massive rock canyons to lush forests to small villages to Meridian, the main city in the game. I do find it impressive how many different types of environments they fit into this one open world. The world itself is smaller than that of like The Witcher 3 or Assassin's Creed Origins or AC Odyssey or any of these other AAA RPGs, but I do think it works for Horizon. It doesn't feel like they shoehorn side content in this game. I think it has the right amount of collectibles and side activities that dissipate before you start to get bored of them. And I do love most of the side activities here. I mean, you have your standard bandit camps, and corrupted zones function pretty much exactly the same, where essentially you just clear out enemies from the area. Tall necks are a really fun version of viewpoints, where they obviously are these really tall machines that you need to climb in order to reveal the map. It's really fun trying to find the locations where you can jump onto them, getting the timing right, and then also the actual climb up is fun as well. I personally never cared for the hunting grounds, which are essentially just challenges that involve killing enemies in certain ways with certain weapons. I just found it annoying. With the combat in Horizon, I mostly just use the bow and arrow in melee combat, so like forcing me to use like the tripcaster is just something I don't particularly like. My favorite side activity in the game though is the Cauldrons, which remind me of the tombs from the earlier Assassin's Creed games, where these sections were pretty much just like nice little set pieces that had a good mix of combat and platforming. And these areas also had a mysterious tone to them as well, especially if you play them before you get too deep into the main story. Now, one of my major complaints with The Witcher 3 is just how poorly Geralt controls and how much he feels like a tank when running around the world. It feels very clunky. I feel like Horizon does a better job in that aspect, where Aloy's movements flowed together pretty well. The dodge mechanic in the game is way more useful than that in The Witcher 3. I do find the basic platforming in the game pretty clunky though. Yes, they do have your typical yellow handholds to show you where to go when climbing, but when you're trying to like run across small platforms or at points where you have to like rappel down, the game just doesn't respond some of the times, and you end up falling to your death for just really dumb reasons. You can't override machines in the game, and through that you can mount them and use them similarly to how you would ride a horse in a game. Initially in the game, it isn't as helpful, as it's kind of a pain to override the machines to begin with, as you need to sneak up on them and wait a while as you override them. I mean, most of the times it's just quicker just to run there than to actually override a machine, but one of the later skills on the skill tree does allow you to just call them at will, and that's when it's actually worth using. Fast travel in this game is pretty great after you get the golden fast travel pack. as it gives you unlimited fast travel, and every time you pass a campfire, it unlocks a fast travel point. But to get the golden fast travel pack, you need to get the right crafting materials to craft it initially, which doesn't take too long, but it is a minor inconvenience. If you don't have the golden fast travel pack, you need to have a standard fast travel pack to fast travel, which obviously every single time you fast travel, it takes one away from your inventory. And if you have none in your inventory, then you can't fast travel. And as someone that likes fast traveling in games, I personally go for the golden fast travel pack at the first opportunity. Now for the combat, which mostly revolves around bow and arrow combat, I never really focused on the other weapons. I always love fire arrows in this game as they prove really effective against most of the machines in the main game. I actually use melee combat a good chunk in this game as well. Not saying that's good though. It is pretty clunky, where sometimes it latches on to enemies, and at points it feels like it's on auto control, but I still personally find it effective. I don't really use the other weapons as often, but some of the weapons that you do get from the Frozen Wilds are pretty powerful and make some of the bigger bosses in the game a cakewalk. The game does have an inventory system that does fill up pretty quickly, and I do find it kind of annoying, the micromanaging that you have to do with all these materials, where your inventory just gets clogged up by things that you rarely use in the game, but you also just don't want to just throw them away, so it kind of becomes an annoying thing to manage. But I do enjoy the crafting system in the game. It is pretty basic, but I enjoy trying to craft better storage in the game. I do love how you can craft arrows in the middle of combat. I really do love New Game Plus in Horizon, as something about Horizon is that the enemies don't actually have levels. So when you're leveling up, you're simply leveling up Aloy. Like, Aloy's the only one getting better. The enemies stay exactly the same. So on New Game Plus, it's not like The Witcher 3 where the game actually gets more difficult on New Game Plus. In this game, it's the same game. It's just that you have really overpowered gear, like the Shield Weaver armor you get by finding all the power cells, and I really love the armor. It's quite possibly one of my favorite armors in all of gaming. It gives you a rechargeable health bar that makes it almost impossible for you to die, and it really just makes the experience so much more fun for me. The side quests in the game are solid. There are some that are listed as side quests, and they are typically of the same quality of the main quests, introducing interesting characters and having decent narratives. But there are also some errands in the game, and those are more tedious gameplay wise, usually revolving around killing a certain machine or hunting animals for an NPC. They're fine for what they are, but they aren't particularly fun. And to be honest, even the side quests themselves get a bit redundant for me after a while. I feel like many of them involve just following trails, which is just an annoying aspect in the game for me. I did find some of them pretty good though. I like Sun and Shadow, I like Death from the Skies. I did like how if you did some of these side quests, the characters from those side quests would show up in the final mission of the game. That's a cool aspect as well. I didn't even talk about the Focus yet, which is essentially this game's version of Eagle Vision or Witcher Sense, and I don't particularly like it as an investigation tool. I don't like how you have to scan most things during investigations. I don't love how hard it is to see the trails that you have to follow. I don't care for it, but I do like it as a spot in a narrative, and I do also think it's helpful in finding out the weaknesses of the machines that you're fighting. But now let's talk about the structure of the game, and through this we'll talk about the main narrative as well. The game starts off with an intro movie where we see Aloy as a baby being raised by Rost. And something I did find annoying about this is that it plays automatically when you first launch the game, but to watch it again, you have to find it within the main menu and actively push on it. Like, it doesn't start when you start a new game, like it just skips all the way to the tutorial, and I just find that kind of an annoying aspect. Though at the end of the day, obviously it's nothing game breaking. But after this, we do get a decently long prologue playing as young Aloy as she finds the Focus, and again, I really love this mysterious tone that we get set up from the very beginning here. But then we have a training session with Rost that seems to last forever. It is obviously teaching you the basic mechanics of the game. But then we fast forward to Aloy, now having grown up, being ready for the proving, so that she can eventually try to find out who her mother is. And I do like this section of the game. It is mostly setup and tutorials, and the story itself is pretty generic in this portion of the game, but I still find it fun on the replay. And I love how the game splits off from here, where we essentially get 3 separate storylines that, for the most part, can be done in any order. There is the Noir storyline that focuses a lot around you finding the War Chief Sona, getting revenge for those that attack them, and this is is probably my least favorite storyline of the three. I mean, I don't mind Varl as a character, he's fine, but outside of that, I do find these missions pretty tedious, as it feels like something you would do in a side mission. There's a lot of tracking, there's a lot of clearing out camps, it's just not fun. The second storyline revolves around Meridian, with Aaron trying to find his sister and stopping a plot to destroy Meridian and kill Sun King Avad. This one's fine. I mean, I don't love the Field of the Fallen quest, and Into the Borderlands is also a bit slower for me as well, but I do really like Aaron as a character, and I don't mind the conclusion of the storyline. But the storyline that is the best of the bunch by far, and one of the reasons why I adore this game, is the Zero Dawn storyline. And again, the mystery that surrounds this section of the game just reminds me so much of the older Assassin's Creed games, where I just adored those games for their modern day sections and their mysterious sci-fi sort of story, and Horizon, to be honest, does it better. Through the course of this game, it does answer most of the questions that it raises, unlike Assassin's Creed, where we never got any answers on anything. I really love missions like Maker's End and the Grave Hoard. Deep Secrets of the Earth is really great. The Heart of the Nora, The Mountain That Fell, all these missions are, to be honest, the best missions in the game for me. We learn about what happened in the old world while getting these really great ruins to explore. We meet Silence, who is easily my favorite side character in the game, and he has such a complex background that I really can't wait to explore in a future game. I obviously love piecing together the narrative of finding out what happened to the world. All of this is just so great, and it's such a major reason why I love this game's narrative as much as I do. But then we get to the final mission, the Face of Extinction, where we get a string of 3 pretty big fights. The first one taking down Helis, getting revenge for Rost, and then follow this up with defending the city of Meridian against a horde of machines, where you get to use this really overpowered cannon. And finally we get the final battle with a Deathbringer, which I found that to be really anticlimactic, if I'm being honest. I mean, we've already fought multiple Deathbringers in this game up until this point. The fact that the final boss battle was just another Deathbringer, I mean, that was just kind of lackluster. I mean, obviously it is a stronger one than the ones previously in the game. It has more HP, probably does more damage for all I know, but it's like, it's just the same fight that we had before. I mean, you just berate it with either fire arrows, or again, if you have the weapons from Frozen Wilds, you could just use those and kill it within like 45 seconds. Like, it's really just an anticlimactic fight. And to be honest, I never actually loved the ending of the game itself either. I mean, I always found the scene where Eloy finds Sobek's body to be just really ridiculous, where we get this conversation from Sobek, her talking to Gaia, and Gaia like asks her about not having children, and Sobek lists out all the traits that she would want her kid to have, which are all the traits that Eloy has. It was just too much on the nose for my liking. It just seems so ridiculous that she would be having this conversation and explicitly describe Eloy. But then we get the post-credit scene, which is really great. I love how this sets up a sequel with Silence capturing Hades and starts asking it about its masters, which I assume is going to be the major storyline of the next game. But that's it for the main story. I mean, I guess I should talk about Eloy as a character, and I've thought about this for a while, and I do think I can say that she is probably my favorite female character in all of gaming. While she does seem to be a bit too perfect within the narrative, never really showing any real flaw, I do think she still comes off as relatable. I mean, she has a really emotional side with her trying to figure out her origins, and also having a pretty quick wit with her. I mean, the dialogue, while a bit clunky at points, I mean, I feel like Aloy's dialogue, when she would respond to things, I feel like she would respond in a way that I would personally respond to things. I guess I might as well mention that as well, is the dialogue options. I think the dialogue options in this game are pretty solid. I think they feel in line with her character, though I will say that the system as a whole is just really pointless. I mean, none of these choices have effect on the narrative. They're just simply there to add more interactivity within the game. But I do love Eloy as a character, and that's a lot of what got me through some of the slower segments in the game, like that Noir storyline. But that's it for the main game, but I guess I might as well talk about the Frozen Wilds DLC, which the playthrough I did most recently was actually only the second time I ever played the DLC. I actually forgot a good chunk of it before replaying it here, and I will say story-wise, I do find it pretty slow. I mean, it doesn't really add much to the overall narrative. It takes place before the ending of the main game, so it doesn't really feel important. But from a gameplay perspective, I think the DLC is pretty solid. It adds a new area to explore, more side activities which are pretty fun. I liked most of the side quests here as well. To be honest, the Side quest Waterlogged is quite possibly my favorite side quest in the entire game. You get new weapons that I mentioned as before are ridiculously overpowered when returning to the main game, so overall I do like the Frozen Wilds as a whole, despite me having a bit of disappointment with it narratively. So there we go, those are my opinions on Horizon Zero Dawn. It's still one of my all-time favorite games, it's still one of my all-time favorite game narratives. Most of the problems that I have with the game are nitpicks, and of the Witcher-style RPGs, I do think this is probably the least flawed of the bunch. And it is a game I can't wait to see a sequel from, as I feel like this is a series that has so much potential moving forward. But yeah, another reason why I wanted to play this right now is that there is a video I will be doing in the future that will involve this game, and that is a ranking of every PS4 exclusive. So that's coming sometime down the road. I mean, this is the first game I played in that process, so that video is still a ways away, but it should be fun to make when I get around to it. But for now, that's the video. Thank you for watching.